I never thought a simple favor could turn my life upside down. My name is Sarah. I'm 52, married to Tom for 27 years, and we have two wonderful kids, Lily and Ryan. Life for us had always been steady, sometimes quiet, sometimes chaotic, but predictable in a way that felt safe. I'd always been the responsible one in my family, the one who tried to keep the peace, the one who believed in doing the right thing, even when it hurt me. It all started on a Thursday afternoon. I was sipping coffee on our back porch, watching the kids goof around with the dog, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my mom, Betty. "Sarah, honey, we need a huge favor. Can you call us?" I frowned. Mom and Dad weren't usually dramatic. Something was off. I called immediately. "Hi, Mom, Dad," I said cautiously. "Hi, Sarah, sweetheart. We're in a bit of a bind," my dad started, his voice tight but practiced. "There's an urgent family thing. Your brother Michael, he needs help and we can't handle it all ourselves." I felt a pang of unease. Michael, my younger brother, had always been reckless. Money came and went in his life like water through a sieve. He had a good heart, but he'd made some questionable choices over the years. "What kind of help?" I asked. "Well," Mom's voice softened, dripping with concern, "it's a financial thing. Nothing illegal. Just a loan. We thought maybe you could co-sign. It's just temporary, just to help the family. We're all counting on each other." I hesitated. My instincts screamed caution, but the guilt hit immediately. My parents made me feel like refusing would make me selfish. I don't know, Mom. Co-signing alone isn't small." "I know, darling," she said, almost whispering. "But you're the only one we can trust. If anyone finds out, it could ruin things for all of us. Michael, he's in a tight spot and we can't let him sink. You're the only one who can help us." I glanced at Tom, who was sitting beside me, watching silently. He raised an eyebrow. I could see the warning in his eyes, but the look was also patient, like he knew I'd probably cave anyway. I don't know," I murmured, heart pounding. "I want to help, but I don't want to get trapped." Dad sighed. "Sarah, we wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. You've always been responsible, the one who keeps everything together. Just this once, help us keep the family afloat. It'll be temporary, I promise." I swallowed. I wanted to trust them. I always did. I told myself it was for the good of the family, for Michael. It was just one loan, one signature. What could go wrong? The next day, I signed the papers. Tom sat beside me the whole time, cautioning me, but eventually even he agreed, reluctantly. We thought we were helping family. We thought we were doing the right thing. A week later, I was reviewing our bank statements when I noticed something strange. A large sum of money had been transferred, but not where I expected. I frowned, scrolling through the details. It wasn't the family account. It wasn't paying bills or any legitimate family emergency. It was going to Michael. And not just for a loan repayment, it was spending money, lavish, unnecessary purchases. My stomach turned. I froze, staring at the screen. My parents had made it sound like this money was keeping everyone afloat. They'd made it sound like they needed me, my responsibility, my trust, and instead it was lining Michael's pockets. That's when I realized I had been played. But I didn't realize that was just the beginning of the nightmare. I couldn't stop staring at the screen. My heart pounded in a mix of anger and disbelief. Michael had always been irresponsible, but this felt deliberate. I called him immediately, trying to keep my voice steady. "Michael, what's going on with the money?" I asked, forcing calm. There was a pause on the other end. Then, with that infuriating casual tone he always used, he said, "Oh, just some stuff I needed. Nothing serious." "Nothing serious?" I repeated, my voice sharper now. That's a lot of money, Michael. Where exactly is it going? Oh, just bills, a few things for the apartment, you know. He laughed lightly, like I was overreacting. I could feel my blood boiling. I co-signed that loan for the family, Michael, for emergencies, not to fund your luxury shopping sprees. He sighed. Relax, Sarah, everyone's fine. Just chill out. I hung up, my hands trembling. I wanted to scream. I wanted to march over to his place and demand answers. But I knew that wouldn't fix the betrayal. It would only escalate things. I needed the truth from my parents. I needed to understand how they could let this happen. That evening, I called them, trying to sound neutral. Mom, Dad, I looked at the account. Where did the money actually go? There was silence. I could almost hear them exchanging glances. Then my mom spoke, her voice tight. Sarah, we know you told you Michael needed help. That's all it was. That's all it was? I repeated incredulously. It went straight to him for personal expenses. How is that helping the family? Dad's voice was defensive now. Sarah, we're not hiding anything from you. Michael needed support, and we all agreed this was the best way. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They weren't apologetic, they were justifying it. They had pulled me in, trusted me with legal responsibility, and used me as a shield while their favorite child got exactly what he wanted. I don't understand why you needed me to co-sign, I said, my voice trembling. Why not just take it yourselves? Mom was quiet for a moment, then said, Sarah, we couldn't do it alone. We needed someone reliable. We knew we could count on you. I clenched my fists. You counted on me to be your scapegoat. Tom, who had been silently listening in the background, came over and put a reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'll figure this out, Sarah. Don't let them steamroll you. I nodded, though I felt a storm of emotions inside. Betrayal, anger, sadness, disbelief. I loved my parents, but I couldn't ignore what they had done. And Michael? I wanted so badly to just yell at him, but I realized that wouldn't solve anything. I needed a plan. The next morning, I started going through every detail of the loan, every transaction, every clause in the contract. My stomach sank as I saw the full scope of what had happened. My parents had set it up so I was legally responsible if anything went wrong. And Michael? He could walk away without a scratch. I sat down with Tom that night, papers spread across the kitchen table. We need to do something, I said, finally letting my voice harden with determination. Tom nodded. We're not just going to sit here while they take advantage of you. We can block them legally, take over the payments ourselves if needed, make sure they're the ones scrambling this time. I swallowed, a mixture of relief and fear coursing through me. It sounded perfect on paper, but I knew one thing for sure. My parents and Michael wouldn't take it quietly. And that's when I realized this wasn't just about money. This was about control, about power, about finally standing up for myself. But I didn't yet know just how ruthless they could be. The next morning, I decided it was time to confront them, my parents and Michael. I needed answers, and I needed accountability. I drove over to their house, heart racing, rehearsing what I'd say 100 times. When I arrived, Mom greeted me warmly, smiling as if nothing was wrong. Dad hovered nearby, looking a little more serious than usual. And Michael, well, he lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware, or maybe pretending to be unaware, of the storm about to hit. Sarah, what a surprise, Mom said, her voice sweet. Come in, come in. I stepped inside, trying to keep my composure. I need to talk, I said bluntly. Dad gestured to the living room. Of course, what's on your mind? I took a deep breath. The money. The loan I co-signed. I found out it went straight to Michael for personal use, not the family emergencies you told me about. There was an awkward silence. Michael looked up, smirking faintly, like this was someone else's problem. Mom's voice was calm, almost rehearsed. Sarah, you know we didn't mean anything by it. Michael just needed support. It's all good. I felt a surge of anger. All good? You used me as a co-signer. I'm legally responsible for that loan. Do you have any idea what could happen if something went wrong? Dad shifted uncomfortably. Sarah, please, we didn't see it like that. We thought. You thought. You thought it was okay to manipulate me into this while your favorite child gets whatever he wants? Michael laughed, irritatingly casual. Come on, Sarah, don't act like this is a big deal. I'm just a guy trying to live my life. You're making it sound like a crime. I felt my hands shake. This was beyond money. It was disrespect, dishonesty, and betrayal all rolled into one. I turned to Tom, who had quietly followed me inside. He squeezed my hand, grounding me. You can't let them gaslight you, he whispered. I nodded, then looked back at my parents. I need the truth. Did you ever intend to keep me informed about where the loan was going? Mom hesitated, then set her head. Sarah, we thought it was easier if we handled it ourselves. You wouldn't have understood the situation. My blood boiled. Easier for you. That's what this was. Easier for you to hide Michael's mistakes while I take all the risk? That's what it was. Michael rolled his eyes. Drama queen much? It's just money, Sarah. Relax. I felt something inside me snap. I had spent years being the responsible one, the peacemaker, the one who put family first. And now I realized I had been treated like a tool, a safety net, not a daughter or a sister. I turned to Tom. We need to fix this. We need to take control before they ruin us financially. Tom nodded. We can, but be prepared. Once you take action, there's no going back. They will fight, they will lie, they'll try to manipulate you emotionally, but you can handle it. I swallowed hard. I knew he was right. This was bigger than money. It was about standing up for myself, protecting my family, and finally refusing to be walked over. But as I left their house that evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Michael and my parents were already plotting their next move. And deep down, I knew they weren't going to make this easy. I just hoped I was ready for what was coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying the confrontation over and over. How could my parents and Michael be so calculating? I felt a mix of hurt, anger, and disbelief, but beneath it all, a spark of determination had ignited. I refused to be a victim in my own life. The next morning, Tom and I sat at the kitchen table, armed with our laptops, papers, and an overstuffed folder of bank statements. We need to see exactly what we're dealing with, Tom said, his voice calm but firm. I want every transaction, every clause in the loan agreement, every possible loophole. I want to know how they managed to put this all on me without consequences for themselves. Hours passed as we've meticulously combed through every detail. Each discovery made my stomach churn. There were hidden transfers, extra charges, and subtle manipulations in the paperwork that my parents had carefully orchestrated. It was intentional. Every dollar going to Michael had been disguised to look like a legitimate expense. They did this on purpose, I said quietly, almost to myself. They wanted me to be the one responsible. They knew I'd never say no, and they exploited that. Tom reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We can fix this. We just have to be smart. Legally, we can block them from accessing the money and take over payments ourselves. It won't be easy, but it's possible. A mix of relief and fear coursed through me. Relief that there was a solution, fear of the inevitable backlash. But for the first time in a long time, I felt in control. Over the next few days, we dug even deeper. Bank officers confirmed that with the proper legal filings, we could assume full responsibility for the loan and prevent any misuse by my parents or Michael. I felt a surge of satisfaction just thinking about it. For once, the tables could turn. But there was another revelation that shocked me even more. As we reviewed the transactions, I noticed subtle signs that my parents weren't just favoring Michael, they were actively deceiving me. They had talked me into believing this was a family emergency, while simultaneously reassuring Michael that he could use the funds freely. Every word, every manipulation, every tearful plea had been part of their plan. I sat back, my hands trembling. Tom, they never wanted me to know. They didn't care if I got trapped financially. They only cared about protecting him. Tom nodded. It's betrayal, plain and simple. But now we know, and knowledge is power, Sarah. That evening, I called Michael. I'm taking control of the loan, I said evenly. All future payments will be managed by us. Any attempt to access the funds without our knowledge is over. There was a pause. Then Michael's voice, sharp and incredulous. You what? You can't do that. This is our money. Mom and Dad agreed. This is mine. I didn't waver. Not anymore, Michael. We know what's been happening. We're protecting ourselves, and you can't touch it. I hung up, feeling a strange mix of triumph and dread. Triumph because, finally, I was taking control. Dread because I knew this was only the beginning. My parents would fight. Michael would fight. They would try to manipulate, guilt trip, and even lie to anyone who would listen. And I realized then I had to be ready for anything. Because in families like mine, when trust breaks, nothing is sacred anymore. Tom and I spent the next week planning every possible step. We didn't want to rush into anything, but we also knew time was against us. My parents and Michael would try to move fast, and we couldn't let them. Every evening after the kids went to bed, we'd sit at the kitchen table with legal documents, bank statements, and a notebook full of ideas. I've been thinking, Tom said one night, we can take over the loan completely. We'll pay it off ourselves, legally remove your parents' access, and make sure Michael can't drain it. But we have to do it by the book. No shortcuts. I nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. I don't know how they'll react. Mom and Dad, they've never been challenged like this before. And Michael, he'll scream, cry, maybe even try to manipulate me emotionally. Tom smiled faintly. Good, let them. We're not here to fight emotionally. We're here to protect ourselves. That weekend, I confronted my parents again, but this time with a new perspective. I wasn't pleading or begging anymore. I was prepared, armed with facts, documents, and resolve. I've gone through everything, I said firmly. The loan, the transactions, the way Michael has been using the money. I know exactly what's been happening. Mom blinked, caught off guard. Dad shifted uneasily. Michael leaned back on the couch, looking smug, like he knew he still had some power. You can't just take over the loan, Dad said, his voice tight. Oh, I can, I said calmly. Tom and I have talked to the bank, and legally, we can manage the payments ourselves. Any further misuse by you or Michael will be blocked immediately. Michael's smirk faltered. Wait, what? You can do that? No way. Yes, I said. We can, and we will. The loan was meant to help the family, but it's been abused. I'm not going to be responsible for your recklessness anymore. There was silence, a tense, suffocating silence. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and dread. Satisfaction because I was finally standing up for myself. Dread because I knew this was not the end. My parents and Michael were cunning. They wouldn't give up without a fight. Over the next few days, subtle signs of resistance began. Mom sent me text messages, dripping with guilt. Sarah, please, we're just trying to help Michael. Don't do this to us. Dad called late at night, trying to reason, trying to manipulate. Sarah, think about the family. Think about the kids. Don't do something you'll regret. Michael, on the other hand, became openly hostile. He'd call, ranting, accusing me of betrayal. He even tried to guilt-trip Tom, painting me as the villain who was tearing the family apart. I ignored it all, focusing instead on the legal steps. With Tom's help, we filed the necessary paperwork to assume control of the loan. Each form we submitted felt like a small victory, a way to reclaim the power they had stolen from me. But even as I felt the tide turning in our favor, I couldn't shake a nagging thought. This would not end quietly. Michael and my parents would retaliate, and I had no idea how far they were willing to go to get what they wanted. That night, I went to bed exhausted, yet strangely determined. I realized something important. For the first time in years, I wasn't just reacting to my family. I was leading, and while the battle ahead would be messy, I was ready to fight. Because I had learned something crucial. Sometimes love and loyalty means standing your ground, no matter how much it hurts. It didn't take long for the first clash to happen. Just a few days after we filed the paperwork, I received a call from Mom. Her voice was unusually sharp, trying to sound casual. "Honey, we need to talk. All of this, it's too much. Can't we just handle it like we always do?"
I froze for a moment, then took a deep breath. Mom, I've already told you. The loan is being managed by Tom and me now. Any attempt to access it or use it without our knowledge is blocked. That includes Michael. There was a pause. Then her voice cracked slightly. Sarah, please, don't do this to us. Don't make things worse. I felt my chest tighten. This was the same guilt-tripping tactic they had used for years. I could almost see the tears forming even as she tried to sound desperate. Mom, Dad, this isn't about making things worse, I said, trying to stay calm. This is about protecting my family, about making sure that the irresponsibility and manipulation stop. Michael, of course, wasn't far behind. That evening, he showed up at our doorstep unannounced, looking annoyed but trying to act casual. Sarah, you can't just do this. You're ruining everything. Mom and Dad agreed this money was mine. I'm sorry, Michael, I said firmly, but the agreement wasn't transparent and the way you've been using the loan is unacceptable. Tom and I are managing it now. That's final. He scoffed, shaking his head. You've changed. You're just like them. You're trying to control everything now. I can't believe this. I wanted to shout, to remind him that this wasn't about control. It was about responsibility. But I kept my voice steady. No, Michael. This is about accountability, something you've never had before. As he stormed off, I felt a strange sense of relief. The confrontation was draining, but it also felt like a turning point. For the first time, they weren't running the show. Over the next few weeks, subtle battles continued. Mom sent passive-aggressive texts, Dad called with worried threats, and Michael tried every trick he could think of to get around our control. Yet every time, Tom and I stayed calm, responding with facts and legal backing rather than emotion. And slowly, the tide began to turn. I noticed changes in their behavior. Tension at family gatherings, awkward conversations, and Michael's frustrated outbursts. They were realizing, finally, that their attempts to manipulate me weren't working anymore. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't done. This was just the beginning. They were clever, and they were determined, and if I let my guard down even for a second, they'd find a way to exploit it. I went to bed that night exhausted, but a strange sense of satisfaction settled over me. For the first time in years, I felt in control, not just of the loan, but of my own life, my own boundaries, and my own decisions. But deep down, I knew the real test was yet to come. The day we officially assumed control of the loan felt surreal. Tom and I had filed all the paperwork, confirmed everything with the bank, and double-checked every clause. It was final. The loan was legally in our names, and my parents and Michael no longer had any access. Sitting in the living room that evening, I felt a mix of relief and tension. I had thought this moment would bring peace, but it didn't. Instead, there was a heavy silence in the air, the kind that comes before a storm. The phone rang. It was my mom. Sarah, I don't understand. This isn't fair, she said, her voice trembling. We raised you, and you're doing this to us? I took a deep breath. Mom, this isn't about fairness. It's about responsibility. You and Dad used me to shield Michael from the consequences of his actions. That stops now. There was a long pause. Then she hung up. Michael, however, didn't wait. He called multiple times that day, alternating between anger and guilt-tripping. You're ruining everything. Mom and Dad are devastated. This isn't how families should treat each other.
I ignored him, Tom reminded me. Sarah, every call you take from them now is a chance for them to manipulate you. Don't fall for it. Still, the psychological pressure began to take a toll. At family gatherings, tension was palpable. Conversations that once felt warm and normal were now laced with resentment. My parents avoided direct eye contact, Michael was visibly sullen, and even distant relatives sensed the unease. One afternoon, Mom cornered me in the kitchen while Tom was out. Her voice was low, almost pleading. Sarah, please, think about the kids. Think about your family. Can't we just work this out? I met her gaze, steady and unwavering. Mom, I have thought about my family. That's why I'm doing this. Protecting my children and my household from the chaos that your favoritism created. She flinched, and I could see the realization dawning on her. I wasn't going to back down. Then came the day Michael tried a more desperate tactic. He showed up at our door with a check, trying to bribe us into letting him regain access. Look, Sarah, we can work this out. Take this. Just trust me. We're family. I stared at him, the weight of years of manipulation and lies pressing on me. Michael, you've had your chance. The loan is ours now. Any further attempt to access it or manipulate us will be considered a violation. No exceptions. He threw the check on the porch and stormed off, muttering threats. That night, I sat down with Tom, exhausted but resolute. They're not going to give up. They're going to keep trying, I said. Tom nodded. Let them. The difference now is you're not the same person they used to manipulate. You're prepared. And we have the law and each other on our side. I finally allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, the balance had shifted. My parents and Michael had underestimated me, and now they were learning that loyalty could only go so far before it became strength. And I knew, deep down, the real test was still coming. The final confrontation that would decide who really held the power in our family. Family gatherings became unbearable. Every holiday, every casual dinner, even simple Sunday visits were loaded with tension. My parents' usual warmth was replaced by thinly veiled resentment, and Michael's bitterness was impossible to ignore. They all knew the loan was no longer under their control, and the shift in power was glaring. At one dinner, my mom made a pointed comment about responsibility. You always think you're so responsible, Sarah. Maybe too responsible, she said, her smile tight. Some people just don't understand the sacrifices we make. I held my fork, taking a deliberate bite before replying calmly, Mom, responsibility is about honesty, about accountability. That's why Tom and I manage the loan now. It's not a matter of pride. It's about protecting my family. Michael rolled his eyes. Here we go again, Sarah the perfect, always trying to control everything. I felt my blood pressure rise, but I stayed composed. No, Michael, this isn't about control. It's about fairness, something you've had plenty of and abused. The tension in the room was so thick I could feel it pressing down on me. My father, usually the quiet mediator, avoided eye contact entirely. I realized then how much our family dynamics had shifted. The ones who once had power were now visibly scrambling, and it felt strangely satisfying. But it wasn't just about family dinners. Michael tried more subtle tactics, sending texts, leaving passive-aggressive notes, even calling Lily and Ryan to try and turn them against me. I caught him once whispering to one of my friends at a party, trying to spin the story in his favor. Tom reminded me, ignore the noise. They're losing control, and manipulation is all they have left. Don't engage. I nodded, though it was exhausting. Every interaction felt like a minefield. I knew I had to stay calm, logical, and emotionally strong. But I also realized that this battle was changing me. The meek, responsible daughter who always put family first was evolving into someone who demanded respect. One evening, I overheard Michael on the phone with a friend ranting about how unfair I was being. Sarah thinks she can just take everything from us. She's ruining everything Mom and Dad built. I can't let her win. I felt a chill run down my spine. He sounded desperate, but dangerous. He didn't understand that this wasn't a game anymore. I wasn't just standing my ground. I was building a wall they couldn't breach. By the end of that week, it became clear my parents and Michael were cornered. The more they tried to manipulate, guilt trip, or charm their way back into control, the more their desperation showed. And I knew it wouldn't stop until one final confrontation settled everything. As I went to bed that night, exhausted but resolute, I whispered to myself, they underestimated me, and that's their biggest mistake. But even as I felt a sense of control, a tiny voice in the back of my mind warned me the final storm was coming, and it would be messier than anything we had faced so far. The psychological warfare escalated quickly. Mom and Dad's attempts to guilt trip me became more subtle, their words laced with manipulation, disguised as concern. Michael, on the other hand, became aggressive, trying every trick in the book to regain control of the loan or make me feel guilty for taking it from him. One morning, I woke to a voicemail from my mom. Her voice was soft, trembling, almost tearful. Sarah, I just want you to know, we didn't mean to hurt you. Please, think about your father and me. We're old. We've done our best. I listened to it twice, my stomach twisting. It was classic guilt tripping. I knew it, and yet part of me felt that old pull, wanting to comfort them, wanting to smooth things over. I took a deep breath and deleted the message. Tom, sitting beside me, shook his head. Don't engage. Every time you respond, it gives them a foot in the door. They know exactly what they're doing. He was right. I had to keep boundaries firm. But Michael didn't stop. He called, texted, even tried to show up at the grocery store to confront me in public. Each encounter was a test of my patience, but I refused to give him the satisfaction. One afternoon, he cornered me in the driveway. Sarah, this is insane. Mom and Dad are upset. You've ruined everything. I looked at him calmly, seeing the desperation behind his bluster. Michael, you've had every chance to be responsible. You blew it. Tom and I are managing the loan now. You're not going to manipulate or guilt trip us anymore. That ends today. He laughed bitterly, shaking his head. You think you can just take everything from us and get away with it? I don't think, I said firmly. I know. And I don't care how upset you or my parents are. I'm protecting my family now, and that's non-negotiable. That night, I reflected on how far this had pushed me. The constant manipulation, the emotional attacks, they had forced me to grow stronger, to set clear boundaries, to trust myself. For years, I had allowed guilt and loyalty to dictate my actions. Now I acted from conviction. But there was an undeniable tension in the air. Michael was desperate, and my parents were frustrated. I knew one final confrontation was inevitable, the moment when all the manipulation, lies, and resentment would erupt, and the family would have to face the truth. And I had to be ready. Because in this family, the line between love and control had been blurred for years, and someone had to redraw it. The final confrontation came sooner than I expected. It was a Sunday afternoon, and my parents had invited us over for what they claimed was a family discussion. I knew better. I could feel it the moment I stepped into the house. Tense air, sharp glances, the quiet buzzing of anticipation. Michael was there too, sitting in his usual spot on the couch, arms crossed, his smirk gone, replaced by frustration. I could tell he'd been trying to psych me out, but this time I was ready. Mom started with her usual act. Sarah, darling, we're just worried about the family. Don't you see how your actions are affecting everyone? I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. Mom, Dad, I've thought about this every day since the loan. I've looked at the facts, I've listened to your excuses, and I've seen the consequences of your actions. This isn't about hurting anyone. This is about fairness and responsibility. Dad opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. No. You've had your chance to explain, and it's clear you intentionally manipulated the situation to favor Michael. I won't let it continue. Michael stood up abruptly, his face red with anger. You've gone too far. Mom and Dad trusted you, and now you're acting like a tyrant. I felt a surge of calm determination. No, Michael. I'm finally acting like an adult who refuses to be manipulated. I am responsible for my family, and I will not let you or my parents drag us into chaos. The loan is under our control, and that ends the manipulation once and for all. The room fell silent. My parents' faces were a mix of shock, frustration, and, dare I say it, respect. They realized I was unshakable. Michael's anger simmered, but even he couldn't argue with the truth. I continued, my voice firm, but not cruel. I know this isn't easy to hear, but the truth is that loyalty is not a weapon. Trust is not a bargaining chip. You've used me for too long, and it ends today. We can move forward, but only if boundaries are respected. Mom's eyes filled with tears, Dad looked down, and Michael's jaw tightened. I felt a strange weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time, I wasn't pleading or negotiating. I was standing firm, and everyone knew it. After a long pause, I added quietly, I forgive you, for what it's worth. But forgiveness doesn't mean I will let the past repeat itself. We all need to respect the boundaries that have finally been set. The silence stretched. Michael finally muttered, I guess I get it. Mom and Dad didn't say much, but I could see the understanding in their eyes. They realized that manipulation no longer worked, that the daughter they had underestimated was now stronger, smarter, and unshakable. As we left their house that evening, I felt a mixture of relief, exhaustion, and pride. The confrontation had been intense, emotional, and draining, but it had been necessary. I had finally reclaimed my voice, my agency, and my family's peace. I knew the scars of betrayal wouldn't disappear overnight, and some relationships might never fully heal. But for the first time in years, I felt a sense of control, stability, and empowerment that no one could take away. And I finally understood something vital. Sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting yourself. The weeks that followed the final confrontation were surprisingly calm. The tension in the family didn't disappear overnight, but the sharp edges softened. Michael, frustrated and humbled, kept his distance, and my parents gradually realized that their old tactics no longer had power over me. I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything that had happened. For years, I had carried the weight of responsibility, the burden of being the good daughter, the peacemaker, the one everyone relied on. And for years, that loyalty had been exploited. But now I understood that loyalty alone wasn't enough. Love without boundaries could be dangerous. Tom and I continued to manage the loan, making every payment meticulously. Each time I saw the account balanced and secure, it felt like a quiet victory, a tangible reminder that I had taken control of my life and protected my family from harm. The kids noticed the change, too. Lily told me one evening, Mom, you seem stronger now, like nothing can shake you. Ryan nodded in agreement. Yeah, it's like you finally stopped letting people push you around. I smiled at them, feeling a sense of pride and relief. I've learned that being responsible isn't just about helping others. It's about protecting yourself and the people you love. I also realized that forgiveness was a choice. I didn't have to forget the betrayal, and I didn't have to pretend everything was perfect. But by setting boundaries and standing firm, I could forgive without being hurt again. As for my parents and Michael, relationships were forever altered. We weren't enemies, but the dynamics had shifted. They had learned a hard lesson. Manipulation and favoritism couldn't override honesty and accountability. And I had learned an even harder one. Sometimes the strongest act of love is saying no, even to those you care about most. Sitting on the porch one evening, sipping coffee and watching Lily and Ryan play, I felt a profound sense of peace. The storm had passed, and I had emerged not broken, but empowered. I whispered quietly to myself, almost like a promise, I'll never let anyone take advantage of me again. Not my parents, not Michael, not anyone. I've learned my worth, and I won't let it be questioned. The loan, the confrontation, the betrayal, it had all been painful, exhausting, and heartbreaking. But in the end, it taught me something invaluable. Strength isn't about fighting everyone else. Strength is about standing firm, knowing your limits, and protecting your life and your family from those who would take advantage. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free.